Yeah, the one's competent.
Oh, they're all good.
I can accomplish it.
Okay, I'd like to call to order the August 6th meeting of the Council's Youth Committee. Roll call, Madam Secretary, let the record show all members are present except Mr. Joseph, who is ill. And we have the fortune to have our council chair, Ms. Terry Castle, going to sit in with us as well tonight. If everyone would please rise now for the invocation to be given by Councilman Johnson and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Heavenly Father, guide our decision-making process tonight, that we do the bidding of the people of Ascension Parish. We also give our condolences to the families of the two incidents this past weekend where people were ultimately massacred, and pray for their families for the wisdom and the guidance and the strength to proceed forward through these troubling times for them. Also look out for our men and women in the military and our emergency responders throughout the state, the parish, and the country. In your name we pray, amen.
Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, welcome everybody this evening. Item number 3 is the chair's additions. There are none except for a little bit of housekeeping and a potential addition of an item to the agenda. Mr. William Daniel, our IDD, has requested a spot, as you know, that would require on the agenda this evening a unanimous consent to do so, to discuss difficult issues he's having with Baton Rouge water. So the chair will entertain a motion.
Motion that
Second.
we add it to the agenda.
Been moved by Councilman Dawson, second by Councilman Lawler to add it to the agenda. Any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, we will, motion carries, add that item to the agenda, and we'll do it straight away. Before we go into that, so it'll be 5A. Item number 4 is the public comment period. Anyone wishing to speak on any of the items this evening, so that'd be 5A or B, and then 6 all the way to 18. Please come up to the secretary and sign a red or green card. That'll be given to me, and you will be duly recognized during the appropriate item. So item 5A, Mr. William Daniel, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the council committee, utility committee. This is a small contract, less than $25,000, not to exceed $24,800.
Motion.
Could we maybe just hear what the contract is, so the public at home that's keeping score will
For
know
legal services, to evaluate a contract that was sent to us by Baton Rouge Water for professional services, billing and collecting sewer user fees. I need some help with that, and I'd like to, Ms. Bowles is the Bowles Law Firm is a law firm that practices before the Public Service Commission. She's intimately familiar with these issues, and I'd like to engage her services on this particular contract.
Very fine. So we have a motion by Mr. Lawler to go ahead and engage the Bowles Law Firm for the price of $24,800. Remember, this will be a gentleman and lady. A recommendation to the full council if we get a second and it passes. Do I hear a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Lawler, a second by Mr. Dawson. Time for discussion. Mr. Dawson.
So, William, if you could tell us just a little more genesis on that, if you don't mind. How did, why do we need this?
So in 2013, the parish entered into an agreement with Ascension Water Company to bill and collect sewer user fees when they bill the water bill. So we've been in that contract. In fact, that contract has expired, but it continues month to month.
Well, how long ago did it expire? A pretty good while, or recently? Or?
I would say that it expired, since I have it right here in front of me. I can. Expired Well, it actually continues, the initial term was from January 1st, 2012 through December 31st, 2012, but it continued year to year unless one of the companies terminated it with 90 days, unless either Ascension Parish or Baton Rouge Water or Ascension Water terminated it with 90 days' notice. So the contract has not been terminated. We've not received a termination letter, but we have received a new professional services contract for billing and collecting sewer fees where they've gone up considerably in their fees, but there's some pretty onerous charges in here that I do not think are fair. So they have since stopped billing new customers, and they are now refusing to connect water services to parish-owned facilities. For example, wastewater treatment plants, the mosquito abatement building, and one other one I can't remember. In fact, they sent us an email that all of those requests are going into their drawer, and they're keeping it in their drawer until till I sign that contract. And I'm not going to sign it as it is now, so I'd like to get some, I think it violates our franchise agreement, and I would.
Certainly. What about this 90 days? How are they gonna, are they just ignoring the 90-day
They
notification?
They are. And
Is it Mr. Parrington, are you,
Well, the problem you have is that's your water supplier. If you terminate the agreement and they terminate the franchise, how are you gonna so right now?
no, I know, but I mean, was my understanding that
They're not
they didn't
hooking-
ask to terminate.
No, we're
Okay,
we're
so,
basically
I mean, now they've just come and said, we want to revise the contract, and is what, I don't know except that what William just said, that there's this 90-day window if they want to terminate.
They're
I mean, so the
continuing-
contract should be in place for at least 90 days under the current conditions. It sounds like they're not doing the current condition.
They're collecting and billing. They're not adding any.
they're not adding any new customers, and it
Oh,
says, either
well-
party may terminate this agreement by providing the other party 90 days' notice of termination of this contract. Well, nobody has done that.
Are they required to add customers as we get them in the franchise agreement?
Yes.
So
Well,
they-
no, in the billing and service. agreement.
So they are somewhat in violation. I mean, they can play hardball with us, but it seems to me, we just like Mr. Parrington just said, we don't want to make problems beyond what we have, but it sounds like we already got a serious problem.
Well, I don't want to be strong-armed into signing a contract that is not in the
Right.
best interest of the parish. And, I'll just, for example, if we have 3,500 customers now, if we were to do the sewer deal and we had 20,000 customers, they want to charge us $10 if we change the rate. So that'd be $200,000 a year just to change
Holy moly.
one line on the billing form. If we want to make an adjustment, it's $5 per adjustment. So if we decide we want to give some sort of rebate, then it's 20,000 times 5. If we want to look at a billing history of a customer, if we need to look at a subdivision or something, it's $10 per printed copy of any sewer's customer billing history, whereas our franchise agreement gives us the right to look at them already.
And Mr. Daniel, you have those numbers you just recited
It's in the-
in writing
It's in the contract.
from Baton Rouge
It's in the
Water?
contract that
Okay.
they would like me to sign.
I'm sorry,
So,
Bill, you had.
Then they want to
the
bill us
No, I'm not.
$1.47
I'm-
per bill.
I'm ready to vote.
Okay.
floor. That's a good thing, Mr. Daniel, because when you just, satisfied Mr. Dawson, we're halfway there for sure. And I mean that in a very affectionate way, Bill. So we ready to vote, so what we need is a motion.
Question.
Oh, sorry, one more question. Mr. Johnson?
William, one of the things that we got on here a little bit further on down the line, but years ago, we brought in Mr. Tim Hardy to handle all of our utilities issues. Gentleman had impeccable qualifications as far as this stuff is concerned. And we've got an item on here dealing with that in a little bit. So why are we not using him to manage this for us?
Well, and I don't disagree. Mr. Hardy would do a great job. However, I would prefer that, I got a big contract that I need Mr. Hardy to look at, and I would prefer that he put all his energy and effort into looking at this Sewer Ascension LLC contract. This is a small contract. Ms. Bowles practices in front of the Public Service Commission regularly. In fact, they know each other and are good friends, so I would just prefer that he concentrated on this and I let her handle that. That's why I did it like this.
Okay.
Any other questions for our Infrastructure Development Director? Ms. Gassel? Yep.
No, good.
Okay, Chair will entertain a motion.
Yeah, we've got
Oh,
it.
I'm sorry.
A
We already got
motion and a
Mr.
second.
Lawler with the first and the second with Mr. Dawson. Is that correct?
Right.
Now I'm getting back on track. So, and we've had a discussion. So any objections? Hearing none, that motion carries. And that motion that was made by Mr. Lawler, that's a recommendation, is that correct, to the
Full council.
to the full council?
Yes.
So Madam Secretary, let the minutes reflect that it's a recommendation. Motion carries. All right, moving right along, item number 5, which has become 5B, is the approval of a selection committee recommendation for Louisiana Pollutant Discharge System, AKA LPDES, compliance testing with Curtis Environmental Services. Mr. Daniel.
Thank you. I have my sewer engineer is going to discuss the contract.
Yeah, we're seeking approval of selection committee. My name is Stephen Bolello. I am the project manager for this particular project. And we are seeking approval of the selection committee recommendation for the LPDES compliance testing. We're seeking approval to begin the contract negotiations with Curtis Environmental to sample all of our parish-owned wastewater treatment plants.
Move to approve.
Hang on, before the chair accepts a motion, I want to be sure we have the right. Curtis Environmental, I'm looking in our packets, received a score from our scoring group of 279, and it's rated number 1, and yet that number would be lower than the competitors, CK Associates, Thornton, Musso, and Bellarmine, of 301 and 320 respectively. Is that a typo, or I'm asking, should the 279 not be 379?
Do you have that information, Jenny?
It's on the very first page under the memorandum dated July 29th, 2019.
Yes, it is a typo. CK and Associates LLC was 301.
But cu-
Curtis Environmental was 279, and Thornton Musso was
No,
3.
379, correct? Because later on in the packet, it appears on the actual handwritten notes to be 379. On what's called the
That's
ACUD
what
number
it is,
2.
it's 379. The minutes has the typo.
Okay,
Sorry.
so that's what, your motion is on the corrected minutes. Is that correct, Mr. Dawson?
On the corrected score sheet.
Excuse me, corrected score sheet.
Yes, score sheet.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
So it's been moved and seconded by Mr. Dawson and Mr. Johnson respectively that we approve the selection committee recommendation for the Louisiana Pollutant Discharge Compliance Testing, awarding said contract to Curtis Environmental Services. Do I have any further discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, that motion also carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. Item number 6, gentlemen and lady, is a little bit out of order, and so maybe next time we will take it straight out the gate, just because of convention. It's really no problem, but approval of the July 9th Utilities Committee meeting minutes. Do I hear a motion?
Motion, move, so moved.
A second?
Second.
Moved and seconded by Councilman Dawson and Johnson respectively to accept the July 9th minutes of the Utilities Committee meeting. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, those minutes are approved. Item number 7. Item number 7 is approval of the Selection Committee recommendation on the CDBG sewer program improvements in the Hillaryville, Darrow, and Astroland MB Design Consultants. Mr. Daniel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. So we have started the construction on the Hillaryville CDBG project, and we have selected consultants to do the construction management, and Mr. Bolello will discuss that contract as well.
Yes, so we're also seeking approval for the selection committee recommendation for the CDBG sewer program improvements. This is for resident construction inspection of the sewer installation on the parish's behalf. The committee recommended MB Design Consultants for this work.
Okay, before we do a motion on that, on this one, another housekeeping issue for me. Clearly, the scoring of 390 by MB, I guess, is clearly the top score. And we had a tie in second place of 365 and 365 respectively for ECM and GSA. Listed in second place. There are 9 applicants with only 8 rankings. My recommendation would be to record the tie as a 2.5 and a 2.5. That's just a conventional way of kind of looking at that. And as chair, I performed some stats on this. There's a clear difference between 390 and 365 in the dual tied companies. So the chair, as a result, will entertain a motion to accept this contract.
Do I move to accept, and do we need to make a revision to the scoring? Or is
Well,
that what I'm,
I'm just suggesting in the future not to list them as
Okay.
second, because when you try to compare 9 into 8 and you're missing one, you're trying to figure out what's going on, and really neither one, since they tied at 365, is any higher than the other. So you can't give both of them a 2, you can't give both of them a 3, but what would happen is it's going to take the one that's 3 now at 2.5, and it's going to make it 4, and then the 4 is going to become a 5 and a 6, so forth, down the line till we get to 9. So that, I guess, is what we're voting on. Well, what we're voting on is a 390 for MB Design. And
there you go.
We're not voting
There
for
you
second
go.
place,
I'm
by the
voting
way.
for first.
So we got a motion by Mr. Dawson, a second by Councilwoman Cazo. Any discussion?
Nothing like
Just
efficiency. in
typically
government.
with the scoring, or at least from my memory, what we did with this is, as long as they brought us the top 3, we typically tried to pick out of the top 3. It wasn't anything as far as, if you had 2 that came out and tied for second place, in this
yeah.
case, you considered the top 3 with 1 and a tie for second, if you wanted to, as far as go outside and get the next person. If we had an engineering firm that had a bunch of work going on and we felt they were type of situation, that's what the scoring was supposed to give us the ability to do. I agree with going with the number 1 group, and this is just kind of an explanation, my understanding of how when I was around, we started this, that's what it was, kind of the thought process behind it was.
Okay, so that doesn't sound like an objection, so we still have a motion and a second on the floor, on the table. Any further discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, Stephen, that motion carries as well. And that's also a recommendation to the full council.
Thank you.
Item number 8 is an approval of the selection committee recommendation for legal services regarding utility matters, Brazil, Sachet, and Wilson, and I finally have pronounced that correctly, I think.
Brazil, Saxe, and Wilson.
I knew it. Okay. Thanks for the correction. I'm going to try it. Brazil, Saxe. It's almost like sexy. SAC, S-A-C-H-S-E, Saxe and Wilson. Mr. Daniel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and council members. This is a legal contract that, for utility-related matters. This contract is going to be with Mr. Tim Hardy, who switched firms from Rodell Parson to Brazil Saxe. I think Mr. Parrington would like to talk about this a little
I'll
bit.
make a motion to approve.
Second.
Excuse me, before the chair entertains motion, I would actually like to read Mr. Parrington, since it didn't make it into our packets, comments from this afternoon mailed to us around 4 o'clock. And then, Mr. Parrington, if you have anything you want to add, please, sir, feel free to do so. His memorandum states, gentlemen, the utilities agenda for the night includes a contract for legal services with the above firm for utility matters. There has been some angst as to whether we are violating our ordinance in awarding such contract, which I will address herein. The parish has sought legal expertise in utility matters in 2017 through the RFQ process. By definition, an RFQ request is a qualification-based selection process, and the intent of an RFQ is, capital 2 for emphasis, is to allow you to select who you feel is the most qualified for your project. An RFQ was submitted to the selection committee from Rodell Parsons Law Firm, submitted by attorney Timothy W. Hardy. The lead counsel for that proposal was Timothy W. Hardy, whose qualifications include practicing environmental law for 35 years, including serving as a former Louisiana Department of Environmental Quality, serving as executive assistant to the governor for environmental affairs, and serving as an adjunct professor of environmental law at the Southern University Law Center for 23 years. At your request, the selection committee reconvened yesterday, so it's been considered a second time, gentleman and lady, and affirmed that the primary reason for the selection of the Rodell Parsons firm was the stellar qualifications of Timothy W. Hardy. I have conferred with the district attorney, Rick Babin. That's not in the memorandum, but stating who he is, and the first assistant district attorney, and we see no legal complications to the retention of Mr. Hardy's new law firm with respect to Louisiana law or Ascension Parish ordinances, because the intent of the RFQ process is to retain the most qualified candidate. The only substantive change is the billing source, not the primary attorney selected to perform the work based on qualifications, and it's signed O'Neill J. Parrington Jr., our parish attorney. Mr. O'Neill, would you like to?
I think that's basically what I'm.
You spoke so eloquently in the memorandum.
Secretary of DEQ.
Yeah.
And just besides working with.
And I want to make it clear that this is for utility matters only. No other legal services under this particular contract.
So, and that's good to note in the record, because previously, the contract with Rodell had ACUD 1, ACUD 2, West Ascension drainage, sewer, and personnel matters. Many of those functions are still going to stay with Rodell, but strictly the sewer function.
Well, the personnel matters,
primarily.
the personnel matters will stay with Rodell, and the utility matters.
All utilities will come now
will go to Brazil
Saxe, to Brazil Saxe.
So,
Okay,
Mr.
so I'll now entertain a motion, or if you want
Well,
further
we have a
discussion.
motion, don't we?
Well,
We have a motion.
I called it out of order, but we can do it again. I wanted everybody, I don't like making motions till we hear what's about.
Okay, well, I mean, I don't know.
I'll make the motion.
Okay, so I have a motion by Mr. Johnson.
I want to modify it.
Okay.
We'll have to have a second before you
I'll
can modify
second
it.
it. You can modify it.
So we can have further discussion. So it's been moved by Mr. Johnson, second by Mr. Lawler, to accept what Mr. Daniel seeks. With Mr. Dawson, I believe. you have
I'd
an
just
amendment.
like to request that we attach this memorandum to the minutes, if you don't have a problem, and to move that forward to the council with the motion.
Okay. There's no such thing as a friendly amendment, but it sounds real friendly. Do I have a second to Mr.?
Mr.
Second.
Johnson is the mover.
Well, I mean, no,
I'll second
you've amended the
Bill's
motion, so now we have a
Oh, we're
second.
going to do it as an amendment?
All right,
Okay.
and so we'll consider that first by vote, and if it fails, we'll go back to Benny's motion and
Okay.
your second. All right, so now it's been moved to amend the Brazil and Sachet.
Saxe.
Saxe. Well, no, I can't
Remember,
do
it's
it.
like sexy.
Yeah, I even
Sachet.
said that if we back the film up, but, okay. The Brazil and Saxe contract with the amendment of Mr. Dawson to attach Mr. Parrington's words that I read into the record, and then send the whole thing as a recommendation to the full council. That's been seconded by Mr. Lawler. Do I have any discussion? Do I have any objections? Hearing none, that amended motion is carried. All right, we're looking now at item number, unless I've lost my place here, 9 perhaps?
9, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Dawson. Number 9, approval of substantial completion for the Hidden Farms Pump Station Rehabilitation Project. Mr. Daniel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, I have the sewer engineer, Mr. Stephen Bolello, is going to come explain this.
Welcome again, Mr. Bolello.
Yes, so we would like approval of substantial completion for this Hidden Farms Pump Station Rehab Project. We went in and replaced pumps and controls on a sewer pump station. It is complete and working great so far. It was a nice little project, so we'd like approval of this substantial completion so we can go ahead and close it out.
Motion.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Lawler, second by Ms. Casso, that we go ahead and accept the approval of substantial completion for Hidden Farms Pump Station Rehab Project. Do I have any discussion?
I do.
Mr.
A
Dawson.
quick question. So I see it has substantial completion, March 31st, 2019 on this certificate of substantial completion.
Yes, I don't have a explanation for why it was just brought to you guys, but we did realize that it was complete by in the timeframe indicated on the notice to proceed, so we're asking for approval.
Okay, so this is accurate, March
Yes, it is.
31st. Okay.
Any further discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, the motion also carries. Item number 10 this evening is the director's report. Mr. Daniel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. It gives me great pleasure and a lot of relief to introduce you to the individual who was selected as the utility director. So I'd like to bring him up here, and y'all can feel free to voir dire him if you like.
I
But
love that
Mr.
word.
Gavin Fleming. Gavin?
Gavin Fleming.
Good evening. How are y'all? My name's Gavin Fleming. Apparently, I've been selected for the position of utility director, and
That's not news to you, is it, Gavin?
no, it's not news to me. I did find out before this, so.
That's good. That's comforting to know.
Well, you know, I like to have things set out. But look forward to taking on the job and see what I can do to help out in Ascension Parish.
Okay, does anyone want to go out there, Mr. Gavin Fleming?
We got Terry, but I would.
We'll go from the left to right this time. Ms. Casso.
Gavin, we're delighted to have you with us. Thank you very much for accepting the responsibility that you have. It's a tremendous one, and we certainly encourage you to do the very best job you can do for the people of Ascension Parish. I feel confident that you will, otherwise you would not have been selected. I also want to thank William for taking the initiative to get this done. We started talking in January about what his needs were, and one of the things that was on his list of people he wanted to hire was someone in this position, and so I'm very, very pleased to see that that has been accomplished. Welcome to Ascension Parish.
Thanks, ma'am. Thank you.
Mr. Dawson.
So I'd like to welcome you also, Gavin. I'd like to hear about your background, if you don't mind. So talk a little bit about your qualifications, previous employment.
I went to school at LSU. I'll go ahead and start there.
We won't hold that against you.
Well, you know, everybody's got to start
So,
somewhere.
okay, LSU, and your undergraduate is in what?
Construction management.
Okay,
Then I've been doing it for construction management for 10 years. Everything from estimating, project managing. More recently, it was I started an office for my company that I work for and progressed that. And then,
was that with a construction company?
yes, sir.
Okay,
We did everything from municipal work to heavy commercial. So everything from $50,000 lift station rehabilitation all the way up to a $50-60 million treatment plant, water treatment plant, hospitals, same everything.
so what, maybe, I don't know if that's Mr. Daniels talked to you about it, was that gonna include the PUA, the upgrade at Parish Utilities of Ascension, and it's gonna also include the sewer project?
Yeah, I believe those were two of the projects that we had talked about.
Right. One of the things that stood out about Mr. Fleming was his construction experience. And, we're doing a $17.5 million construction, and we're either going to do a large construction project with Ascension Sewer, or we're going to, be forced to do our own. So he'll be invaluable. We're also asking Mr. Fleming that he's going to have to get his water
He's gonna have to get as
certifications.
qualified as you are.
Well, that's
I
gonna
don't
be,
know about that.
that's gonna be hard, but, no, I told him he could do it faster and make higher scores, but, I do want him to get those qualifications but I'm also in water and sewer, and he won't have any trouble doing that, and, he's really well-positioned to be the utility director.
Thank you. So, again, welcome.
Appreciate it.
Mr. Lawler?
Yes. Welcome, they've asked all the questions that I would want to ask. Thank you very much for
All right.
coming.
Thank you.
Benny, do you have anything? The only thing the chair would say is that I encourage you to go ahead and get your production, distribution, and treatment cert in water. And even if you make higher grades than William Daniel, we won't talk about that in public. This is a long time coming. I'd just like to say I concur with Councilwoman Casso for multiple reasons, not the least of which has always been on top of Doc Sadley's list, is that Mr. Daniel, albeit a very gifted individual who brings lots of things to the table, and you can witness this just by the growth of my agenda. Used to be 4 or 5 items and 6 or 8, 10, and now it's pushing 20. Has a lot of things on his plate, so I think he needs a strong helper. Sounds like you're going to be that guy. And I would say what Ms. Casso said to you, welcome, and I'm sure you're going to do the best you can for this parish. I guess this is your first foray into government
Yeah.
work?
Correct. Yes, sir.
Okay. All right, well, if you don't have it, I'm sure Mr. Daniel will give you my number as chair of this committee. Anytime you need to talk or anything you need to tell me, feel absolutely free to do so, and I'm sure my colleagues, Councilwoman Chair Casso, who's the chair of the full council, feels the same way. So thank you. Mr. Daniel, any more of your director's report?
That concludes my director's report tonight.
Okay, so we'll move right along to item number 11, which is the approval of change order for Jacobs Engineering, $24,900 for financial evaluation of the Ascension Sewer LLC. Mr. Daniel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I gave a $24,000 contract to Jacobs, specifically their public-private partnership group. They're going to be the financial and from a very high-level look, the engineering for Ascension Sewer LLC. I wanted them to get started as quickly as possible, so I signed a small contract with them so they could start looking at it. But I wanted there to be complete transparency, so I'm bringing this amendment to the council, and so that I could also explain, what they were doing. They're not doing any engineering. They're not working for Ascension LLC. They're working for the parish, evaluating the public-private partnership that we're going to be considering in September. So this will bring their contract slightly up to $49,000. I solicited 5 companies to do this. 2 large accounting firms. They had public-private partnerships also. They had public-private partnership groups as well. The CISON Group, who works for the Louisiana Public Service Commission and evaluates their financial considerations of the companies that come before them, and then another accounting firm here in town who said they were conflicted out. So of the 3, I like Jacobs the best. They also had a local financial person who was with who has actually done work in Ascension Parish before. His name escapes me at the moment. But so that's what I'm asking, is that we go ahead and increase that contract, because they will definitely spend the money before it's all said and done. So I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Daniel. We'll begin tonight with, I know Ms. Casso has some questions.
So, William, there's nobody wants sewer in Ascension Parish more than me, except maybe you.
I definitely want it very much.
I know you've said that many times, and certainly I know Benny, Doc, all the gentlemen in this committee want this very badly. We talked about, I would say 6 weeks ago, about having expertise in this financial arena. So I was concerned when this came up without having gone through what I would consider the appropriate procurement process. By that I mean RFQ, which in legal counsel's own words, by definition, an RFQ request is a qualification-based selection process. And the intent of the RFQ is to allow you to select who you feel is the most qualified for the project. I do think this is a function of the committee and this council, and the council to make that decision. So I would like for you to explain to me how that was your responsibility, and if it was made by a selection committee, who was that committee? Where are the numbers? How did we get to Jacobs Engineering Group?
So, all excellent questions, Madam Chairman. So you got to go back to the genesis of this. Originally, and this goes actually back to the Rodell Parsons contract, I was looking for a public-private partnership expert in the field. So that's why I said I solicited proposals. And for professional services contracts, you can solicit proposals without going through an RFQ. So then these guys were going, Jacobs or whoever was the best, whoever I thought had the best presentation, I wanted to go be subcontracts to Rodell Parsons. So I was going to find who I thought had the best public-private partnership group, and Jacobs Engineering does them all over the country, as did KPMG and Ernst Young, as well, the other two companies that submitted, and reviewed their submittals and selected Jacobs. And then they were going to be a subcontractor to Rodell Parsons. Well, then we're no longer all of a sudden using Rodell Parsons. If you remember, I had $175,000 on the Rodell Parsons contract, which I removed by, which y'all actually removed by amendment in the committee hearing. So then I was left with no lawyers and no financial consultants. So originally on the last committee hearing, I was going to put Brazil Saxe in for $175,000. And then we decided, no, that wouldn't be an appropriate way to do it either. So I'm now facing the countdown of less than 30 days before we come back to this utility committee to make a decision on a contract that is this thick. So I need someone to start looking at this contract immediately so that they can do it justice. So I gave them a small contract so they could get started, which we have the right to do under the rules. And now what I'm proposing to do is amend it without going over the $50,000. But we got 3 excellent proposals, and I just, after reading them all over, I felt very comfortable with the Jacobs contract. And know Jacobs has done these kind of proposals in the past, and so felt like they were the most prepared to do it in the shortest amount of time.
May I follow up, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, ma'am.
So is there an arm of Jacobs that is a financial arm that would mean something to those of us who are looking for financial expertise?
Yes, they have an division that does nothing but public-private partnerships and the financing of them. And they also, within that division, they look at other kinds of financing as well. Government contracts, WIFIA, which is the Water Investment Infrastructure Act, and numerous others. So I think their public-private partnership division is very, in fact, they're out of Florida. And so that's why I wanted to have a local financial person here as well. But they also have engineers in Baton Rouge that are group, but the main group is out of Florida. So, but that was the main group for Ernst & Young was out of New York or one of them. So
does Jacobs intend to have any engineering work in our project?
No.
So they are not conflicted?
No.
We will not see Jacobs Engineering come up to be given contracts inside the sewer program?
No, ma'am.
Okay. That's.
They decided, and I actually had that discussion with them. I said, look, y'all can be the parish's financial advisor, or y'all can go to Ascension Sewer LLC and work with them. And they made the decision they would rather be the parish's financial advisor.
Okay. I think that's all I have for now. Thank you.
Okay, let me, for the record, Mr. Daniel, in your remarks to Chairwoman Casso, you said that, quote, that we were dealing with a this thick, and you made a hand gesture contract. You are referring, sir, for the record, of the second CEO with ASLLC, correct?
Right, and I have not even seen said
And-
contract.
In a document, well, I know from talking to O'Neill Parrington about it, it's added about or in excess of 40 pages. And I also understand it's chock full of legalese that he doesn't feel overly comfortable with serving as the sole financial advisor on it and so forth.
Right, and that's
Although-
why we have Brazil Saxy for the legal
Right.
part, and I wanted Jacobs for the financial, the public-private partnership part of it. And also, I just wanted them to bless the engineering. I don't want them to design it. I don't want them to say, oh, you should use this pipe size or that. I just kind of want to say, yeah, this looks like it's going to work. So,
Okay, so the chair will entertain a further discussion. Whoever hadn't had a first turn, Bill, would you like?
I was there and want to go.
Terry has many
He
questions.
passed, so.
Yeah,
you.
I'd like to go. So let me clarify something, William. You said, the RFP, it was an RFP that went out, and that was by Rodell Parsons, though. Is that,
no,
did
there
I
was no
understand that
RFP.
correctly?
No, sir, you did not. I just solicited professional services from
So it was,
from people who I knew did this kind of work on a national basis.
but somewhere I got that it was to subcontract to Rodell Parsons.
That's correct. I was going to subcontract them to Rodell Parsons. So,
Okay, but Rodell Parsons didn't have a part in this RFQ process, or
No,
is
sir.
that correct?
no, sir.
But you had, so the parish did that, or you did that evaluation yourself?
Yes, sir.
But we don't have any of that data. Is that correct?
I have the submittals from the three companies.
But I don't have it in my packet, or
I
did
didn't-
we get it anywhere?
I did not put it in the packet. It was
So I'd like to get that.
no problem.
And then I think I'm not sure if is there a proposed contract from Bernard Capital or whatever we call these people?
Ascension Sewer
Ascension Sewer
LLC.
LC. There has been, its lawyer gave it to lawyer. I have not seen it yet.
Okay,
So O'Neill was
so we don't
reviewing it.
have it.
So I have not had the chance to review it yet, so I'm waiting to get Brazil Saxy on board so that we can start looking at it. O'Neill was looking through it. Ascension Sewer is waiting for Brazil Saxy to get on board. So all of this got delayed by approximately 30 to 40 days with Mr. Hardy changing law firms.
So is he gonna reimburse us for all that?
Well, I don't know what he would, I don't know how
Yeah,
you
I'm joking.
that's,
I'm
you know
joking.
how they say, that's 30 days I'll never get back?
Never get that.
Yeah. Did anybody do any background? Does Jacobs have any relationships or had any relationships with Bernard Capital or any of those partners that are a part of this? I keep forgetting that acronym.
Ascension
What
Sewer
is it?
LLC.
Ascension Sewer LLC.
They do not have any relationships with Ascension.
So somebody went back and did that historical look?
Well, I don't know about a historical look, but I asked him if there was any conflicts with Ascension Sewer, with Ernst & Young, and none of them had a conflict, none of the firms. Now, one firm.
No, I'm asking specifically like Jacobs. Did Jacobs have any history with any of these Bernhard Capital companies?
Well, they don't have any history with Bernhardt Capital. They don't have any history with Ascension Wastewater. I don't know if in the past Jacobs, and I mean, they're huge multinational companies. I don't know
Yeah.
if they've ever did anything with Shaw somewhere, someplace, but I don't think that is a conflict. If
I'm just curious.
Not
That's it.
that I'm aware of, Councilman.
And they're gonna do, your words were 30,000 foot review of the engineering and
Yes,
then a detailed look at the financials.
Yes, sir.
What do you expect the work product of that to look like?
I expect it to be a report that they will present to the council the night that we discuss Ascension Sewer LLC,
With a recommendation?
with a recommendation as to whether or not Ascension Sewer LLC is going to do what they say they can do.
So tell me again how this timeline is, tell me again the timeline for this.
The timeline is considerably compressed, sir. September the 10th, I believe, is the committee hearing, and September 19th.
But we don't have, I guess, Jacobs, this contract, or when will they get when will the contract be available for them to begin work on?
Well,
Is it ready now, or is it just a matter of?
I think there's a draft of the contract. I haven't seen it. I've just been waiting to do all this before I actually had them start. Since they do have a small contract, if y'all do approve this and they can start, then they can start looking at the contract today. Brazil Saxy can't start looking at the contract till next Thursday.
So I don't know, somewhere I picked up that it was just between lawyers now, that it wasn't.
Well, a lawyer for Bernard Capital sent it to O'Neill. So those are the only two people that have seen it.
But what you're telling us is if we have this contract with Jacobs, that contract will be available for them to review immediately?
Yes.
Okay, and then when do you expect them to report back to us with, this is a good contract or not?
Well, I presume that, that the public reporting back will be at the committee hearing on September 10th, but, I'm sorry, the 9th. We plan on, once the contract, once they start reviewing the contract, then I plan on having them, brief me, and then we'll brief the utility committee, and then we'll brief the full council, and we'll get your input. And once we get your, as they explain it to you, and y'all have questions or comments or suggestions on how to make it better or how to do things differently, then we'll go forward with that.
So when will this be available to either us on the utilities or the council as a whole? When will that contract be available for us to review?
As soon as Jacobs gets it, in my estimation, it becomes a public document. Mr. Parrington has left, so I don't know if he concurs, but I think that once it goes outside the legal boundaries, if some non-lawyer looks at it, then it's a public document, so I can give it to all the utility members to review as well.
This is awfully aggressive.
It is, but 30 days ago, I wanted to start, but I could not. So, but listen, these guys do this every.
I know, and I understand that. Honestly, uncomfortable is not the right word. I'm a bit apprehensive because, we're talking about something that's in the billion range. It's not in the million range.
Well, it's in the it's $200 million, sir. So $200 million.
Well, I don't know, when you push it out over 30 years, it's
Well,
I don't know, we're arguing
If you push it out
about,
over 30 years and you discount it back to the president, you don't really, when you put discount.
well, even at 100 billions in our business is a lot of money, might not be for, but.
I'm not disagreeing with you.
But what I'm saying is that, I'm worried that, that's a month from now, and we're expecting this company to do an engineering review, a financial review, and to bring something back to us in time for us to digest all that and vote on it on September the 9th. Is that the correct timeline?
That's pretty much the timeline, sir. So I need to get started, so if you'd approve this, I would be happy.
Yeah. Okay, that's all the questions I had
So,
at this time.
let me interject, and we'll continue the Guadaring here. We were originally going to get the second CEA from Ascension Sewer LLC in August, but because of is this not correct, Mr. Tim Hardy's move from Rodell Parsons to Saxy, Brazil.
Brazil Saxon.
Brazil Saxy. I got the right pronunciation, but the reversed order this time. Then that was pushed us back even into September. And while I agree with Mr. Dawson and have some concern myself about it being aggressive type thing, we're already behind the eight ball, not because of Rodell Parsons per se, but because on our side of it, well, it is directly related to that, but let me say it this way. Ascension Sewer LLC has delivered a work product that's in the hands of our in-house counsel.
They've done what they were supposed to do.
Right, so we're the ones on our side, I want everybody to see that are actually pushing it back, and it continues to be aggressive, and I guess, I don't want to put words in your mouth, you don't want to see it go even beyond September to October or so forth.
I do not, and despite Councilman Dawson's apprehensions, I do believe that we can come up with a work product that is, that I can explain to the council, and that Ascension Sewer can explain to council, that Brazil Saxy will be able to explain to the council. And if we don't do our jobs, then don't vote for it. But I think that we can do our jobs, and I think that we can present you with a work product that will be satisfactory, more than satisfactory, that will make you comfortable in having regional sewer on the East Bank.
I tend to agree with the idea that, eventually the ball gets into our court, and each and every one of us can make an individual decision, which will then collectively make an overall decision, yea and nay. So when that product is available, the only thing I would say is, I always say all the time, I know Bill does, a bunch of us say it, the sooner we get it, the better I can go over it, and all the rest of us can go over it, to be sure that the aggressive timeline doesn't result in us missing anything, if that makes sense at all.
I
And I know you want to do that, William. I'm not accusing you of anything here this evening. And in fact, I have some empathy, at least, emphasis on the word some, that, you can't control where people want to work when they leave and go elsewhere. And it's rather clear to me, it was in Mr. Parent's remarks, I read into the record that this gentleman, Mr. Hardy, has an impeccable record, and that the original selection was based more on him than the firm. And so he's moved now, so it's the same thing. We're chasing the individual. And I, quite frankly, I've seen this as a college professor in a form of life over and over and over again. It's not it's not the lab, it's not the university, whatever. It's the professor who brings the goods, and all the people, all around the country want the best and the brightest and so forth. So it's tough on us as councilmen, but nonetheless, I think we have to rely some on what it is you say, and what you feel like you want to work with. Else, if we tell you who we want, and then you don't get the work product, and we're going to vote on it, it's kind of almost like slitting your throat, some anyway.
Well, I'm always a big believer in playing the cards that are dealt you. These are the cards that I was dealt, and I will bring you a product that I think you will be more than happy with. So,
All right, well, let's see where we get.
Get
Further
started.
questions? Mr. Johnson, who's been real patient this evening.
I guess, William, for me, kind of in line with the discussion that's going on here, why the big rush? I mean, I understand and wanting to get this done, like Terry said, everybody up here wants to get sewer done, but at the end of the day, a rush to get the contract done and get it to us and trying to shorten the time frame up, I have serious concerns about not doing this through an RFQ. When we did the 3P process the last time, we did all this through an RFP to get a group in here that we had the opportunity to look at and to select as to which we wanted to do, where we've had none of that here. I'm not saying they're a bad company. I'm not saying they can't do the job. I'm uncomfortable with the fact that this is coming to us without any prior knowledge about their abilities or any information as what they presented to the administration or to you as far as what they're going to do for us, what it's going to cost us for them to do, and so forth and so on. And I think that's where I'm having difficulty with going through this tonight.
Well, all of that will be presented to you over the next 30 days, Councilman, so all the
Yeah, but I got to
questions-
make a decision tonight to recommend to the full council whether or not I want to approve this company without that information.
Well, all you're doing is approving a company to do a financial evaluation. You're not approving the Ascension Sewer LLC, so This company is just a tool in the toolbox to help you make a better decision.
So I guess with all that, who else was involved in going through the information and vetting the companies besides yourself?
I was the only person who vetted the company, sir.
Okay. Thank you.
We still in round one. I'll give you another turn in a minute.
No,
but well, you said you wanted to, Mr.
I'm
Waller.
good now.
All right, you're passing, Mr.
I
Dawson.
wanted to make a motion.
Any further discussion before the chair entertains this motion? Go ahead, Bill.
So I move that we move this to the full council, but have like 3 corky dots below that. One, that the evaluations will be sent to us promptly, result of those evaluations, and that there be some investigation of relations between Jacobs and Bernhard Capital and their companies, or some, maybe something that says that there's no conflicts, okay?
Okay.
And then lastly, that it not be put on the consent agenda.
I'll
I'll
second.
that, too.
Yeah, I'm just thinking.
Give the chair just a moment. I'm taking notes. It's a complicated motion Mr. Dawson made. Okay, so it's been moved by Mr. Dawson, and did the second come from Terry or Eric?
Doesn't
It's all
matter.
the same.
Who wants it?
Benny.
For the record.
I'm not supporting it.
I'll take it.
Second by Mr. Lawler, Madam Secretary, to send this to the full council, a recommendation of Jacobs Engineering with the 3 caveats that we will receive the 3 companies that you have, I guess, solicited and graduated on your own, and that we will get information on Jacobs versus Barnhard Capital Partners as it might relate to any historical or otherwise conflict of interest between those 2. And that the third, I guess, Bill, was not to place it on the full council's consent agenda so we can discuss it freely next Thursday. Did I get that right or close?
You did.
Is it?
Got it.
Okay, so I'm not going to try to even repeat that. Madam Secretary, if you have a problem, feel free to call me. Moved and seconded again. Any further discussion? Do I hear any objections?
Object.
We have 1 objection, so we'll do a roll call, Madam Secretary.
Daniel Sauter,
Yes.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, reporting the vote is 4 yeas, 1 nay. So the motion carries. Madam Secretary, let the record show that, can I quote you exactly? Aaron has to go play dad, and that's, and I say that, it's certainly understandable. He has a personal conflict. This meeting's getting a little longer too, so let the record show he's not here for further votes. Item number 12, is it maybe? Am I back on, ladies
Yes.
and gentlemen? Yeah. Is the USDA, United States Department of Agriculture loan grant update?
No, that's
That's
13.
12.
I did skip one. I knew it would happen. Number 12, and for some reason, loading is atrociously slow
I'm glad
tonight.
to hear that.
I was-
Somebody besides me skips one.
Yeah,
I skip them all the time, so I felt good
you're
about
rubbing
it,
off
too.
on me, Bill. Ascension Sewer update, Mr. Daniel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As the chairman and the chairwoman of the full council were with us when we went to see DEQ, I thought I would give you a report on our conversations with DEQ. We met with Dr. Brown of DEQ. He's a little immobile due to some surgery on his foot, so we met at his office on the 10th floor of downtown. We had Mr. President, myself,
Jeff Bodier.
Jeff Bodier with Bernhard Capital, Julius with Bernhard Capital, and like I said, Chairwoman and Chairman. And basically, we gave them an update on where we were with Ascension Sewer, and then they discussed where they were with the $60 million that they had promised the parish. And they made it clear in no uncertain terms that if we did not have a positive vote on Ascension Sewer, that the $60 million would go away. And it wasn't a threat. He has financial considerations within DEQ that he has to take care of. And the money, I think, has been available to Ascension Parish for over 6 years. And he said that's longer than he's ever held money for anybody. And he's holding it on to us based on the progress that we seem to be making with the Ascension Sewer. But he said, you've been to the altar before and you didn't get wed then. So I'm not passing judgment on whether you're going to do it this time or not, but I can tell you that the $60 million is going to go away. Even if you do it, there may be an interest rate increase because you can't hold off much longer on the interest rate. So if we pass it and we can access the $60 million relatively quickly, we may be able to keep the 0.95 money. I asked him why in terms of falling interest rates, why he needed to raise it, and it has to do with if he raises the interest rate a little bit, that gives him more money available to other people who had requested it. He said he had someone in there earlier before us that requested $9 million that he could not help. And so that was pretty much the discussion. He then said, and I need to tell you that we are going to continue to crack down on what we're going to allow to be put in Manchac and New River and Blind River. He says, you don't have a sewer system, so I can say you're under a consent decree to fix your sewer system. He says it's much easier to say you're not going to be able to put anything into all the major tributaries of the parish because we're going to lower and lower the limits on what we will accept in those. And so we'll basically, and it's not our intention to stop development, but we're under a mandate from EPA and the federal government to limit the amount of pollution in our rivers, the BOD and the TSS and the ammonia, the nitrogen. So we're just going to lower those numbers until it's really not conceivable that you'll be able to meet these. So there'll be no more, they'll approve no more systems unless, I think they have unless you combine it with another system or you're building a regional sewer system. And then there's a pass for building a regional sewer system. You get additional time to build your system without the lower limits. So the practical effect of that would be that if we're unable to come to some agreement on regional sewer, then as we continue to these subdivisions that are already on treatment plants that feed into Manchac, they'll have to go to some sort of tertiary treatment, and it will become extraordinarily expensive by anybody's definition to pay for those improvements. And so that was a fairly sobering discussion from the secretary. And I want to say again that it was not a threatening discussion. It was merely, this is what we have to do to enforce our rules. So I'll be happy to answer any questions based on that. But Councilman Satterlee and Councilman Casso were there, so they can also chime in if I've misstated anything.
So I'll go ahead and, as the chair and a member who was at the meeting, put in my 2 cents as follows. I don't think anything of what you said, William, is misleading in any way. In fact, I've got some direct notes from the conversations had. I originally asked for this meeting, as you know. I'm so glad that we finally had it, and that was only because Dr. Brown has his infirmity with his foot right now. But glad to go downtown and have done it. Why did I want the meeting? The two things you mentioned, the SRF loan, keep hearing from the public clamoring all that's not in jeopardy because we're using Dr. Brown's words for 8 years. You guys, I've been holding this money for you.
Yeah, 6, I said 6, it's 8. Thank you.
And he specifically mentioned, what I captured in quotes, is that used expressions like, I'm treading water, I'm underwater. And he gave examples, as you indicated, that, there's some other folks that are unnamed parishes, because that's not professional, who have their hand out, cap in hand, would like to get money. You mentioned one at $9 million, which, by the way, he actually said that particular parish is already at $80 a month rate. And they're only looking for the $9 million from the DEQ. And as he said, he can't really give it and then be able to honor the commitment that he has right now, which is just verbal. We emphasize that for the $60 million at 0.95%. I think it's entirely accurate what you said, that he made about this, that rate, that brother-in-law rate, will not exist forever. And in fact, more than likely, come January 2020, it's going to go up, and it could go up as high as what I captured as 2.5%. Again, he didn't say what it would be. He didn't say how much and all, but he pretty much indicated that's likely to happen. When asked by myself and I believe Terry and others, so what would happen, as far as we all turn in a pumpkin if we don't proceed and so forth, we actually gave the timeline and discussed how we hopefully could get this to the full council no later than the 19th. And he pretty much said, well, nothing would ever keep you from reapplying, but you'd just be getting back in the queue, versus right now having the faith that the DEQ could actually be awarding the parish money. He also mentioned, and I perked my ears, he said, you guys are sort of like the poster child right now, setting the stage for other parishes coming after you. So what I got out of that is, if we let this thing pass again, 8 years will become 10 or more, et cetera. The price will go up on all possible concerns. And you mentioned the gentleman, Julius, I didn't capture, is that his last name or first name?
No, Julius Bedford, I think.
Okay, with Bernhard Capital, he's their financial guru, and I think his input was that if that interest rate actually went up beyond 0.95%, let's say to 2.5%, whatever, that would pretty much, what I captured, kill the Ascension Sewer LLC deal, because they could no longer hold the rates at the competitive level that.
I don't think it would kill the deal, Councilman. I don't mean to interrupt, but
Okay.
I think he said the rate have to maybe be a little higher.
Well, that's what I was headed to, and to me, that would kill the deal, because now your council's not going to go with it. Because rates is obviously a big sticking point of this council, so I'll compromise that way with you on it. Now, relative to the consent decree, I'd like to also say, I asked him, my job on this committee as chair is to kind of like, use the example, herd cats, because everybody's feeling differently for various reasons, and I say that respectfully. So if you were me type thing, how would you do it? And he said, well, the best example I could give you, Councilman, he mentioned Shreveport and East Baton Rouge as examples to tell my colleagues that, that's something you don't want to do. So I believe, in my heart of hearts, that the DEQ is serious. I can't give it, and he didn't, and he can't, a time frame that they would actually put us under consent decree, if ever. But I believe it's coming if this deal goes down. I was more in the meeting that indicated that to me than not. And of course, the brother-in-law loan, the 0.95%, $60 million, key to, as you said, without any rate increases from what we have right now, getting this thing going. I have no reason to doubt that the gentleman will not be increasing his rates. So with that, Terry, you were there. Did you have something to add or subtract? Or?
I concur that everything you gentlemen said happened. I'll add that Dr. Brown has such an interest in this process and in our vote on the 19th that he said if he can at all accomplish it, he is going to attend. He said, I want to watch what happens there. So I thought that was interesting. And I certainly hope he does. I hope he comes.
Well, I think he'll be here.
That was the indication I got, that barring any unforeseen complications, he would be here to, as he put it, watch what happens there. So I think that, we are not under any kind of threat, but I think we are under a promise that we must move, and we must do our due diligence, and we must come to some kind of conclusion, or we are going to lose that $60 million, and certainly we're going to lose it at a 0.9%, and then we may find ourselves in a much more complicated situation thereafter, because he said, all I have is I think if I'm quoting him correctly, is the economic development hammer. And am I right about that? I think that was the term he used. And I've already kind of put that down on some things, and then I'll just have to go further.
Well, it'll raise rates for everybody in the parish. Eventually, it'll raise, some people's rates will go up much quicker because they'll have to pay for these treatment plants to do the tertiary recovery and to build lines to ponds, and it'll be, I like the way you put it, it'll become a much more complicated situation.
So I concur that was what we heard. It was an interesting meeting, and I think we are compelled to do our very best work here. Thank you very much.
Mr. Dawson?
So I haven't thought about this in the sense of what I thought I understood from you, which is that since Ascension Parish doesn't have a parish-wide treatment plant, then it's really hard for them to impose a consent order on us and compel us to do something. However, they certainly will proceed forward with reducing TMDLs or whatever those permit limits are to the point to where the commercial facilities that we have, the package treatment plants, will become very expensive to operate if at all possible to meet those permit requirements. And that process is in the pipeline right now.
It's already in for Bayou Manchac.
Yeah.
It's headed to New River and.
Well, they've given us the warning on the other streams, is that correct?
They've been here, they came to the committee and actually talked about Chuck Berger, I want to say Bergstrom. Chuck Berger came and he basically laid out what the problem was.
Yeah. So what I understood was Manchac, and then really so a lot of the tributaries or distributaries into to the Amite are going to, are impaired or on their way to being impaired, and they will have the TMDL limits also.
They're
correct?
impaired. Dr. Berger said they were, I think it's Dr., but maybe not, just Chuck Berger. Mr. Berger said that they are impaired now. They just haven't made the designation. But the other thing that is notable about what would happen is the rate-making authority would go stay completely out of our hands, and whatever Ascension
Whatever it
Wastewater
costs
had to
them,
do,
yeah.
they're going to go
Exactly.
to the Public Service Commission and get a rate increase to get it done. And I believe that whatever it costs, if it's $140 a month, it's going to cost $140 a month.
So I guess what I'm hoping that we could see is, can we have anything done to say this is what's going to happen if we don't repair those streams? Which it sounds to me like the only repair that can be done is either through regional treatment or these tertiary treatments that we know are very expensive. So,
Well, regional treatment will take it completely out of the
Yeah.
streams. It'll put it in the Mississippi River. The tertiary treatment, or they may say, no wastewater or no effluent can leave your lot. So you would have to figure out a way to recycle it all.
I don't know if it's possible, William, but I would I would like to hear what the alternative is. We're going to be faced with this vote in September or sometimes when it's all ready, and do we really know what the alternative is? So if in September, October, whenever the vote is there, that says, and we say, nope, we're not going to do this. We're not going to institute the parish-wide sewer program. Then what happens the next year? What happens the next year? What happens the next year?
So that can be part of the financial financial analysis.
Okay,
Good job.
And so I'll try to have that included as part of the financial analysis, what will happen in the future if, you know, you love the environmental assessment so much. There's the do-nothing aspect of an environmental assessment, and then the other alternatives. So we'll have the do-nothing alternative evaluated, but
well, I'd like that.
it will not be a pretty picture. And I would, the next thing I had actually was, if we do the regional sewer, I have a spreadsheet that shows how much will be taken out of Bayou Manchac.
As far as
on the
what,
fir-
how much what?
How much effluent that we're currently discharging into Bayou Manchac will be taken out with a regional sewer. That
Okay. So one other clarification I'd like, if you don't mind, William, which is, you know, you did say, you know, that there'll be an impediment to development. However, it's my understanding that it's not just new treatment plants that will be affected by this. It's my understanding that the existing treatment plants will, when their permits come up for renewal, then they
Absolutely.
will be put into this situation where they have to do this very, very expensive treatment. So, you know, I don't think the alternative is that, you know, the only result of this is that you won't be able to build any new homes in Dutchtown or Prairieville, wherever it is. The fact is that those people that currently live there and have lived there for a long, long time will, you know, their rates could possibly go yes.
Yes, sir. And that's what I said. Certainly those along Bayou Manchac will be the first to see the rate increase because they're going to have to move that effluent discharge out of Bayou Manchac. And I mean, I think Ascension Wastewater has a plan. They have some ponds. They're going to have to move it over to those ponds and treat it there, which means laying a lot of additional pipe and then stricter treatment limits on all of their treatment plants, tying all that together. It's going to be very expensive.
I would love to see that laid out.
So I have
But,
30
you know,
days to put together the plan. and
I know, hey, look,
plan is-
we're all fighting calendar, but, you know, I mean, we're gonna make a vote here that's going to affect the parish for the next 30 or 40 years, and I just,
And I
I
agree. I will
want as
have
much
that-
information as I can have.
I will have that information for you. I will have, that was actually going to be part of the package, the do-nothing type of
Okay.
plan, so.
Perfect.
And I think Bernard Capital has already engaged Dr. Richardson to take a look at that as well, so.
We're gonna have to have some engineer to tell him,
You'll have to, well,
yeah,
you'll have to see, you'll get to see it maybe from two different perspectives.
thank you.
Yeah, and as a follow-up to Councilman Dawson's questions, another thing in my notes that I left out in the meeting with Dr. Brown, he said something to the effect that I've already sent you guys, meaning Ascension Parish, a letter talking about building restrictions. And we know what he's talking about there. In fact, he's talking, Bill, about, you mentioned Prairieville and Dutchtown and so forth. And through hook and crook, we're, let me rephrase that. Through creative thinking, we're working around that, but I'm also the belief that will not last forever.
No, and again, you know, I know there's people in the parish that say we shouldn't have any more development. And I don't think that this will please them because what's going to happen is a $40 sewer bill is going to turn into a $50 sewer bill, which is going to turn into a $110 sewer bill, which is going to turn into a $150 sewer bill. So, you know, just saying, oh, I don't want sewer because I don't want development is really not a very thought-out position on this.
The problem that we have today is with the people that currently live here. So, the affluent problems we have is not today, is not anything to do with people gonna move here next year.
No,
The guys that aren't here aren't flushing their toilets yet.
All right.
We are, and I might add that at the risk of, well, everybody in this parish believes they're not a polluter, and it's my belief that's not so.
Yeah, I would have to concur with that. Even the best even the best systems are putting treated effluent in. It's just the limitations that they're putting in. This is not, you take it out, you put it in the Mississippi River, and your ditches run with clear water. No matter how well the systems operate, they're still going to have 5 BOD, 5 TSS, or something like that, ammonia, nitrogen, fecal coliform. There's just no way you can keep it out. Again, this should be, is this in their package, Madam Secretary? This is that spreadsheet. So this is a spreadsheet. Councilman, Mr. Chairman asked me to quantify how much would be taken out of Bayou Manchac with the regional sewer. That was one of the questions he had. And in phase one,
Thank you.
um,
You need to be taller.
and this doesn't, don't height shame my assistant, Mr.
Wait till I stand up.
And this doesn't include any commercial or individual septics. And we would probably get some commercial, we wouldn't be getting individual, but you can see that we would take almost 2.5 million gallons per day out of Bayou Manchac. And if there was a optimistic note by Dr. Brown, when we told him that, he was ecstatic. So
Is
he's
this
very.
phase one, or is this,
This is phase one, yes, sir.
well,
I'll concur that he was very pleased with that number.
Yeah, and from the chair's perspective, since the public can't see what was just handed out, it not only talks about the, as William just said, almost 2.5 million gallons per day, which is a conservative estimate because it doesn't include commercial, but the vast majority of that is with the AWT councilmen, the AWT customers, which reads like, it's divided in our packet by subdivision, a who's list for districts 4, 7, and 8. So I guess it's no wonder why Doc Sadley, just as one example, has been quite a cheerleader for this. We need it bad in 4, and we're part of the problem and so forth. The first 7 on the category subdivisions are actually APG operated and owned, but just about everything, well, actually a little further than that. There's some
4 school board.
There's
that's
some school
board.
boards in there, but picking up at around 12, and the list goes to 59, is all AWT customers that are currently on package plant systems. And again, repeat that number. Everybody says that, that's not a correct number. Where does it come from, et cetera, et cetera. The numbers don't lie. It looks like the exact number is 2,484,400 GPD gallons per day. I think it's easy to round to 2.5 and above. We've been playing with the number 2.7 and so forth, if you add the commercial to it and so forth. But, Mr. Johnson.
Yeah, I met Dr. Brown once and wasn't at that meeting, but in meeting with Secretary Hatch that was there prior to that, and it's one of the things that I think we've been talking about for the last 8 years that I've been on this committee, or a little bit longer than that, this decision by far is probably the most important decision that a council could make for this parish that I'm aware of. And getting it as right as possible is the most important things, and gives us as people who represent people the most angst that you can possibly have. Because we want to think that, or certain people think that, well, it affects development. And as Councilman Dawson pointed out a while ago, this affects everybody in the parish. Because no matter where you go to, sooner or later you get to an impaired stream. And it's not just going to affect, what this does is buy us time with everybody else in the parish. It will be a point in time where people that we are allowing to stay on septic tanks because of the ordinances that was passed many years ago that said as long as the same owner stayed in the house and no upgrades were made, that you could keep your septic tank in the ground, those restrictions, those allowances are going to go away. And when you do have to put in a system, it's not going to be a cheap system to put in and or maintain, because it's not just going to be a regular, for lack of a better word, MODAD tank that's going to be sufficient enough, even in your own individual yard. So the importance and the concern and the raise of angst, and for me personally, is when we start talking about rushing and doing this thing within a short period of time and trying to get this data in, gives me more concern that there's more room for error on my part to make sure that the people that I represent understand that this was the best thing that we could do. And while I fully understand DEQ's point, because I think it was 7 years ago or so, Councilman Sadler can attest to this, that we put together the PowerPoint presentation and got the $60 million offer from Dr. Opinion and DEQ at the time, or the offer for the loan at that point in time, that, you know, it's consistent heightened awareness of what's going on in the parish. And part of it, that the problem that we face from years back and folks that have been here for a long period of time is it's convincing and making sure that DEQ is being consistent in their message, because we've been told this for 20-something years, that it's only a matter of time before they do something. And it's kind of like the whole story about where the sky's falling. Well, not that you want to upset people or anything else, but it's coming time. The question is just how soon. And I don't know if we got much time to deal with it anymore before some major impacts start happening. Not only to, because like you said, some people are going to sit out there and say, well, good, nobody can build any more developments in the parish. But that's, no development means not only subdivision, but no new businesses coming in. And not only that, your kids may not be allowed to build a house in the parish or put another trailer in or any of those other kind of things. And then whenever you do go back and we're forced to enact certain issues, whether it be monthly testing or annual testing on your septic tanks and requirements being put on you, and that you are maintaining those things the way they're supposed to be maintained. That's all the things that are going to come down the pipe if we aren't able to take action on a proposal to get us community sewer. It's not going to be pleasant for anybody. And so we all have skin in the game, whether we live in Sorrento or AC or Prairieville, Dutchtown, Galvez, wherever. Anywhere on the east side of the river, you got skin in the game. Whether you're in a subdivision, on a subdivision system, or whether you're in an individual home like myself, we all have skin in the game. We all have to understand that this decision is important, and we have to make the right decision for the people. And giving us the information that we can go through and get ourselves educated to make sure that we're making the best decision possible can't tell you how important that is.
And I couldn't agree with you more, Councilman, and I would just respond, first of all, by saying that the first hammer has come down. Bayou Manchac is restricted. It is a 5.5 with a 2 ammonia, which is very difficult to meet. So you have that already in place. It's going to be replicated throughout the parish. And, you know, I'm going to bring you, I think, a lot of information. I think you'll have time to digest it and make a very informed decision for your constituency. But it's not going to be a perfect plan. There's no such thing as a perfect plan. And it's often said that the enemy of good is perfection. So if I bring you a very good plan, but it's not a perfect plan, I would hope that the council in its wisdom would want to go through with a very good plan. Yeah, are there things that we could have done differently, or may be able to have done differently? With if we'd had another 5 years to figure it out, no doubt. But we don't, and we're going to lose our money. We're going to lose control of it. I mean, you know, one of the things that makes this possible is, and I think this spreadsheet is a perfect barometer of that. The chairman pointed out, how many of these on this spreadsheet are AWT? So I would probably say 70 or 80%. The agreement between Bernhardt Capital and AWT is solid. But if this thing doesn't get voted on, that's going away. And AWT is going to be back on their own. We're going to lose 16,000 customers that were going to be given to us. And You want to talk about a complicated situation? I mean, I spent a year trying to figure out, how do I build a sewer system with 3,500 customers? And there is no way to do it. I try to figure out, how can I legally force AWT to participate in my sewer system? Well, I got lawyers that say I can, and I got lawyers that say I can't. But here we have an agreement with AWT, who is huge cheerleader for this deal. And what they're going to have is an equity interest in the company going forward. I don't know that you'll ever get that again. So I will do my best to bring you as much information as possible so that you can make an informed decision that's in the best interest of your constituents. I'm going to do it as quickly as possible and as thoroughly as possible. But again, there's no perfect plan. There is no perfect plan. And if we kill a very good plan because we want a perfect plan, I think we're going to be doing a disservice, not only to the residents who live here today, but their children and their grandchildren. Because this is going to have I think, a far-reaching impact if we don't get regional sewer. And if you think I'm lecturing you, I apologize, because that's not my intention. But, I've looked at a couple of the sewer plans from the past. I actually served on the selection committee on one. This is by far superior to anything that's ever been brought forward. And I'm not saying that because it's my idea. I mean, all I did was put the parties together. They're the ones that came up with the idea. So, but I do think it's workable. I think it's achievable, and I think it makes the best sense for the parish moving forward. And I think it makes best sense for your kids and your grandkids. And this is, I didn't know much about Ascension Parish when I came here. I mean, I knew it was south of Baton Rouge. That's about it. And I passed through it on the way to New Orleans. I knew it was a fast-growing parish with good schools. But as I come to appreciate, I mean, it is a wonderful place to raise your family. It is a wonderful community. The people are great. They're passionate. And, I look at how they responded to the flood and how they've come back. And I see a spirit here that's that is just, an incredible testament to people and their ability to want to move forward and create a better life. And I think that without having regional sewer, we're going to severely impact their ability to do that. So yes, I am passionate about this, and yes, I want to get it done. And yes, I was hired to do this too. So I got a lot of, talk about skin in the game. I got a lot of skin in the game. So anyway, I'll get off my soapbox. I apologize. Moving on.
No apology necessary.
No, I'm fine with that. And I'll exercise some chair's discretion here and call this discussion to an end. It's getting late, number one. But I think that was a good note, Mr. Daniel, to end on, and we thank you for your comments. We're going to move along now to item number, I think it's 13, the USDA loan grant update from GSA. I believe, Mr. Einsel, are you going to give that presentation? Welcome this evening, David.
Thank you. Good evening, committee members. I believe Jenny had put in your packet a general update sheet on the PUA projects. I'm just going to go through that briefly with you. So the water distribution rehab project, we've received all the survey information on that the budget will allow. We're supplementing that survey with additional utility maps to make sure we have adequate information. Project specs are continuing to be worked on for that project, and plan preparation is continuing as well. That project's still on track for turning it over for review in November of this year. On the water meter replacement project, we're continuing on with the plan preparation. We're still continuing to coordinate with the parish on some of the meter discrepancies. I know that summer interns were being used to pick up some of those meters and identify them with GIS coordinates. Project specs are continuing as well, and that project is also still on track for November. On the PUA water plant, ground storage, and Palo Alto booster project, some of these items are a little bit out of order, but basically a survey was done on the PUA intake. Another meeting was held with AP and Freshwater District to review alternatives on the new PUA intake structure. And Owen and White has prepared some alternatives and cost estimates for the new intake structure. And I think another meeting is currently being set up to find out what's going to transpire with that. The Owen and White has continued on their process and operations data. They obtained all of that on the solids contact clarifiers from the vendor. They've started on the hydraulic profile calcs, and they've been evaluating all the plant disinfection and contact time calculations as well. And the structural design on the new clarifier has started. And they've also coordinated with USDA for some of the revised scope changes, and also prepared revisions on the preliminary engineering report. On the PUA elevated storage tank, they're waiting to bring down that tank at an applicable time. Right now isn't the best time to bring it down because of water consumption, so they're waiting to do that inspection of the elevated storage tank. That concludes what I have. I'll take any questions that y'all might have.
The floor is open. Mr. Dawson?
No questions.
Ms. Casson?
Are you disappointed, David?
Well, it looks like
All
you're
right.
off the hot seat. Thank you,
All right,
David.
Thank you.
Okay.
Mr.
Item,
Chairman,
yes,
if you
ma'am.
would allow me, I'm going to need to leave.
Okay.
So,
Okay, let the record show Ms. Castro has left the meeting. However, we still have 3 members present, so we have a quorum, so we can continue the committee's business this evening. Item number 14 is the PUA ACUD 1 and 2 financial report. Mr. Daniel.
I think you went over them in the Finance Committee. I'm still trying to get more built-out financials. We're starting our budget process next week. I hope to have the opportunity to do that. It looks like to date that we're slightly a negative $147,000 deficit in PUA. And I'm not really sure how the ACD number 2 is that's the sewer. I was thinking that should be ACD number 1, so, oh, that's the next page. So we're actually, looks like we're making a little money on ACD number 1 with, but that's as a result of some transfers in to help pay for the bonds that Ascension Parish took on that responsibility a number of years ago. But again, these are not the kind of financials that I want to look at, but these are available, and I'll continue trying to get better financials in the future.
Thank you, William. Mr. Dawson.
Thank you. Well, maybe you don't have the answers, but just in a general sense, what I wanted to comment on was what you said earlier, which was that this is how a sewer system, this is a typical financials for a sewer system that doesn't have very many customers. So we're losing on this. Not, either, I don't know what the 800,000, we're either losing 950,000 a year or 1.7. I don't know which, but either way, I think what it does, it demonstrates to us what happens if, like you were talking about earlier, which is that if one of these major providers pulls out of this sewer deal, and our customers are reduced down to a certain level, then this is, to me, this is what the financials are going to look like.
They are, I think we're spending approximately $4 million a year on the ACD number 2. That's historically over the last few years. It's
Right.
gone up and down a little bit.
4.4 million
Yeah, so,
with 1.5 million in revenues.
right, so it's not
It doesn't make
not the picture that the healthy picture that we would like to see.
yeah, I don't think Warren Buffett would buy this company.
Berkshire Hathaway would pass. Mr. Johnson, do you have anything?
No, sir.
All right, moving right along, is the item number 15, the PUA consumption report. Mr. Daniel?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. So for the next four items, I have the PUA plant manager here, Mr. Jason Lashardi. He is going to go over these numbers for you. And you may notice that I used to do all of these reports, but I'm trying to delegate a little more among the
Thank you.
members of the Utilities Department. So I had Mr. Bolello up here, and I think Mr. Lashardi's been here before, but he will continue to come and do this. But he has a much better grasp of these numbers than I do anyway, so it's good to have him here.
Welcome, Mr. Lashardi.
Thank you. Thank you. Good evening to y'all as well. I know the report looks a little different than it usually does. Ms. Susan Taylor previously put it together. I'm not sure exactly how she put it together, so I just broke it down in the most simplistic terms that I can figure. We also included some support documents, give us a little more transparency, and so a little more understandable where our numbers are coming from. We added a leak report, a flushing report. The meter numbers are where we're getting our flushing, some of our flushing, plant usage, and those type of things that just basically support the overall audit. And from my understanding, you wanted to incorporate both PUA and ACUD together, so you have accounting of both systems now. We filtered 34 million gallons at the water treatment plant. We bought 8.9 million gallons from Assumption for a total of 43.6 million for the month of June. You can see that the leaks, the manual flushing, the auto flushing, and the sample stations and things that we do day to day to keep our system healthy are there. The plant to process water are basically some of our meters. There's a consumption meter, there's a raw water consumption meter, and it just is a better accounting, not a better accounting, more detailed accounting of where our water goes. The ACUD, the leaks, manual flushing as well, for a net gain, for a net loss between the two systems of 1.9 million gallons across both systems. We billed 18 million in PUA and 7 million in ACUD. If y'all have any questions about that.
Questions from the committee?
No, thank you.
I don't have the year-to-date. Do you have the year-to-date offhand?
So you kind of segued beyond just consumption number 15 to 16 leak report, but we can call it as a separate item, or do you have more to add there? Or?
I mean, the leak report, we included that in the audit because these numbers were used to figure where our water's going and how it's being consumed.
Normally Oliver Joseph has questions because he knows the streets better and stuff, but
Yes, sir.
but he's not here tonight, so.
We're trying to incorporate, a little bit of everything. There are leaks that we can't repair, of course, because of the stage of the river. We've made phone calls today to get a projected date on when that may or may not be lifted. I know the river's down several feet and that the Bonnie Carry is also closed now. So hopefully soon we'll be able to get in and get some of those leaks within 1,500 feet repaired.
Gotcha. Okay, the chair's going to take the Liberty 17 and 18 as well, which is the PUA water audit report for the month, as well as 18 year-to-date.
I don't have the year-to-date figure, but it's basically running total of where we are on accounting. I know we were positive in January, and we've lost a few million since then. I don't have the exact figure in front of me. Do you have the accounting of it?
And that's not $1 million, that's
Million
millions.
gallons.
Gallons,
Yes,
okay,
sir.
just for the record, yeah.
Yes, sir.
Questions?
No questions.
Mr. Johnson? I think you off the hook, sir.
Anytime. Thank y'all very much.
Appreciate your testimony this evening. Item number 19, the chair's favorite. We'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
First by Ms. Dawson, second by Mr. Johnson. We are adjourned.